Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Bad for Your Health Entertainment. I'm Tom, and today I am joined by comic book artist and comic book art restorer, anchor, just an overall comic professional, James Pascoe. How are you today, James?
I'm doing awesome. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for coming on. James is best known for his work at DC Comics for a 91-issue run on Azrael, which is incredible. I applaud that run immensely. But you're doing a lot on the art restoration, which I'm gonna pick your brain about today. But
okay,
James, I just want to start with how you got involved in comics. What were some of the things that you were into as a younger man that led you sort of down this path?
Well, I started drawing when I was about probably 6 or 7 years old. I took to it naturally. I was always scribbling things and doodling around the house, and I got a lot of support from my mom and dad at the time. They were like, hey, that looks pretty good, even though it didn't. But the support meant a lot to me, and I just loved it from the first time I picked up a crayon, really. And I never thought about doing it professionally for some years later. It was just something that I enjoyed doing.
What were some of the characters you would scribble?
First things I did were copying drawings out of Mad magazine. I was a big Mad fan as a little kid and a big kid. I used to, in fact, some of my favorite artists are still Mad magazine artists, guys like Jack Davis, who I think is just criminally underrated, as an artist overall. But I was just taken with the style, the caricatures, the uniqueness, the creativity that I saw in the magazine. And I would just spend endless hours copying drawings out of Mad magazine. And that's how I started, really, as a little kid.
That's incredible. How'd you get into the comic books, though? Was that always on your radar, or was that something you picked up as a kid?
Well, I like to tell people that the guy who got me interested in reading comic books was Jack Kirby.
The King.
And the King, yeah,
The King.
And rightly named.
Yes.
The guy who made me want to draw comics was Jim Steranko.
Oh man, Steranko's Nick Fury's.
Yeah.
Oh man, even his few issues of Captain America back in the late '60s, there, like
Yes.
111, just that iconic Steranko vibe.
Yes, absolutely.
Very short man. Very short man.
Yes, he is.
He's a very short man. Nice man, though.
Short and nattily attired.
Always with the black and the gray.
Right.
60s never left that man. God bless him.
No, they didn't. Well, you have to cling on to one decade. That's not so bad,
No, it's not bad at all.
Yeah.
Could be worse. Could be way worse.
Yeah, I just loved reading comics because of Kirby, and I discovered, other artists and writers from the era. I was a big Gene Colan fan.
Gene the Dean.
Gene the Dean, right? Johnny Romita, all the classics. But it wasn't until I saw the cover to Shield #1 by Steranko, and the very second I saw that cover, I was like, I had no idea you could do that in comic books, and I want to do that. So that was the trigger for me.
Shield #1 is a great book. I've got it in my collection. It's
Yeah.
His style. Here we are, X amount of years later, still talking about it. It just transcended comics, and I know a lot of people were influenced by him and the other names, Gene the Dean Colan. I loved it when he returned for that one shot in Captain America like 10 years ago. Awesome.
Oh yeah.
But those guys are legends in the business. John Romita Sr. Can't beat him.
And the quality that they did back in those days when deadline pressure was, much more intense.
Oh yeah.
You were expected to just churn stuff out, and the quality and the creativity, that they came up with under those circumstances is still mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, it's incredible how the business sort of turned over and then became a little harsher at some points, but I don't know. It's just how they were able to keep that assembly line going at both Marvel and DC was incredible.
It really is.
It was incredible. What were some of the other books that you used to read, though? Were you just like a few title type of guy, or everything and everything?
Primarily because of Kirby at the time. I became more of a Marvel fan than a DC fan, but there were a few DC books that caught my attention. I'm a big science fiction guy, so books like Challengers of the Unknown, was really interesting to me because there wasn't a lot of science fiction even in comics back then.
No,
Uh,
because
but
Batman
no,
had already turned back to being kind of serious. Because in the
right,
50s, you had that Batman sort of could go to the moon and things like that, the Brave and the Bold type era.
right, exactly. And I was a big Batman fan. Just the dark, brooding Batman more than the happy-go-lucky. Yeah,
The
exactly.
Adam West Batman.
Yeah, yeah. I you know he I like Adam West. He's
Yeah,
fun. There was a lot of fun to that. But from a comic creator standpoint, the darker Batman was always what attracted me as a kid.
because it's easier to tell emotions with the figure, what you draw in a way of the darkness and the brooding.
Right.
That's just that was always my perception. When it's happy go lucky, it's just sort of holy crap, Robin, and Robin. No inner monologue, no way you can draw the forehead crinkle in a certain way.
Right. And the overhead lighting with the shadows coming down
The film noir aspects almost.
and I'm a big film noir fan, so it all ties together.
Yes,
That the black and white movies, film noir, were a big influence on me growing up, as far as the visual aesthetic. And so that's kind of what I wanted to translate, comics into, or view them through that lens anyway.
well, there's nothing wrong with film noir. I'll tell you what
Yeah.
I've been watching before we veer back to comics. I've been watching the old Val Lewton films of the '40s, Seventh
Oh,
Victim.
nice.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
The lighting and all that.
Yeah.
Great stuff. Great stuff. Great use of lighting.
Yeah. There was, when I was, I don't know, maybe in my prior to teenage years, I spent a number of years on Saturday and Sunday afternoons, and they had movie matinees on TV, and like the local channels.
Yeah.
Before everything became consolidated, there were these great local channels, and one channel would have like an old '40s movie on, and then right after that would be a really bad monster movie, or a science fiction movie with giant grasshoppers or something. And then and I would watch these one after the other on the weekends, and a lot of that was provide the foundation for the kind of things I'm still interested in, really.
Absolutely. I agree with that 100%. We don't, obviously, I grew up in the '90s, so we didn't really have that. Once in a
Right.
while, you'd get the AMC marathon of like The Seventh Victim with Godzilla Beats Mothra,
Right.
or The Mole People, things like
Yeah. The classics. Yes.
classics. And going back to Batman, sometimes you'd see like the Lewis Wilson Batman or the Robert Laurie Batman pre-Adam West, obviously during the war and all that. But coming
Right.
back, but I agree, the dark brooding Batman is the best way to go.
It's the most fun to draw for me. So, just strictly from a getting fun out of it, standpoint, that's the only kind of Batman I'd be interested in working on.
Jumping ahead for a second, how cool was it though years later to actually draw that Batman or ink that Batman over Barry Kitson's art or anyone else's? Like you're touching Batman in a way that had to be like a cool moment.
It was a really cool moment, and to just the feeling that I could add whatever relatively minor touches, to this legacy, of a great comic book character like that. Never left my mind. There were times when I would look down at the page and think, like, I'm not sure what the language requirements are on this show, but like,
You can say whatever you want. There's a few 4-letter words we won't say, but like,
right. Well,
yeah.
say, holy crap, I'm doing Batman, and I would just kind of freak out for a minute because I'm doing Batman. Oh, I'm doing Batman. I better not screw this up.
It's like that moment of elation and then that fear kicks in. It's just like it happens at the drop of a dime.
It can, yeah, for sure.
So going forward in time, though, did you always keep up reading these specific comic books, though, Nick Fury or Batman and all that, all the way until you entered professionally?
I still maintained an interest in the characters, but it was more, I would say at a certain point, it became more creator driven than character driven. I still have my favorite characters, but when I make decisions now, or even during the time period you're talking um, about what to read, what to buy, what to keep, it was really the creators on the book rather than the character.
Yep.
Yeah.
You wanted to support a specific group of people that meant something to you.
Yeah.
And I'm still like that to this day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just like to read a book and think, wow, that was really cool, or that really hit me hard, or, I want the book to make me feel something. And certain characters do that, or certain creators tend to do that for me, and others not as much. So those are how I make my decisions now.
Yep. Same here.
Yeah.
I used to read everything under the sun and what I could get my hands on. Now it's just sort of like there's only a handful of the creators that I will shell out my hard-earned money for.
Sometimes I look back because I was, like I said, primarily a Marvel reader when I was, when I was, say, a teenager or even into my 20s.
Yeah.
And I would buy virtually everything that Marvel put out for a while. And when I think back to some of the crap that I read and bought, I was like, why did I buy that book? It was written by so-and-so. I hate their writing. It was drawn by so-and-so. He's a horrible hack. Why did I buy that? Why did I read that? But it just was where I was at.
Were you a completionist? Are you one of those guys that has to have every issue, or you don't mind having holes in the collection?
No, I'm not a comic book collector as such.
Yeah.
I used to have thousands and thousands of them, and I winnowed it down to basically just what I really liked. I kind of wish I still had some of those because they're actually worth some money.
Yeah.
But I just like gave them away to Goodwill.
Nothing wrong with that, as long as they find a good home.
Yeah, that's kind of what I figured. I just didn't have the time to deal with it. But I've got a number of bookshelves with the stuff that's meaningful to me, that I go back and read over and over again and study the artwork over and over again. And that's really all I want to keep now.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you on that. I had thousands, same thing. Some are worth money, and I bought some of them. And obviously, you know how the comic book market is now. The second the film is announced, oh my God, that character's first appearance is going to go up. And some of them are kind of like, really? I'm like, that book? Come on, man. And then it just, like you said, Goodwill or to some found, I don't mind where my collection ended up.
Yeah, first appearance of Blob Man, or I don't care about any of that stuff. It's just not of interest to me.
I agree. So talk to me a little bit about breaking in professionally. I'm going to jump off screen for a second and give you the floor for 1 second. I'm just moving over. The floor is yours, my man. How did you get into the business?
Well, I think it was 1980. I decided to move to California and go to art school because I thought I had a pretty good job at the time and I was making good money. But I thought, if I'm ever going to draw for a living, I really need to make the move now. So I decided to, I checked out different art schools and I moved to California to attend the San Francisco Academy of Art, which had a really great illustration program.
Great program. I used to hear about that program back in the day.
Yeah. And in fact, there were at least one or more of my teachers who are very well thought of artists in the comic book industry, guys like Baron Story. But so I attended art school for about 5 years, and at a certain point, I had always gone to conventions. I've been going to the San Diego convention every year for like 30 years and more, probably more than that actually. And I did drag my portfolio there and showed people.
You got the papers coming out and you're kind of just going to your booth or just showing it. Oh yeah.
Yeah. I had some good, some good interactions with professionals who gave me valuable advice, and some jerks who didn't help me at all, who I won't go into. But
you can name drop that privately, but I can imagine who some of the jerks in the industry were.
Yeah, some people just, they just couldn't be bothered, and I don't understand that, but I accept it.
It's still
But
around in the business, though. Sadly, that's around anywhere you go. I've seen conventions;
absolutely,
it's around, and it's just sort of like, why are you being a jerk, man? Come on now.
yeah, yeah. Can't you give me like 2 minutes of your time?
Yeah, I
But
agree.
anyway, eventually, I found my way to San Diego one year, and I used to play a lot of basketball, and I had suffered a back injury playing basketball, so I was hobbling around the convention on crutches with my portfolio under my arm, showing people, yeah. And I showed it to an editor for a little independent comics organization company, and I don't know if he liked my work or if he just felt sorry for me, or if he was impressed at my tenacity, or maybe all of the above.
All of the above, perhaps. Yeah,
Yeah, but he gave me my first job,
that's got to be
and
like
yeah, I was so psyched, and and that job led to a situation some months later when this little independent company, who was called Malibu Comics,
Malibu Comics. Yep, yep.
uh, decided they were going to go big time and start what was known as the Ultraverse. And there were a lot of big name creators involved, a lot of really good people. And I got a call one day and said, "Hey, how would you like to work on one of our books? Because we knew your work from this other small job before, and we liked it, and we'd like you to be part of it." And that was kind of my big break.
That's
uh, yeah, because that's you know to anyone out there, it's a dramatic shift when your work is able to be seen every month by the industry. It's one thing when you're trying to show editors your portfolio, but when your work is published month after month and people see it, things can take off in a hurry, and they really did for me.
when that happens, though. Is there like a certain demand of? There's obviously a demand of quality, but is there like what's the word I'm looking for? Like like an expectation, if that makes any sense to you. Like they know your work, but they want it maybe better.
Well, they always wanted better, and if you're a halfway decent artist in your brain, you want it to be better too, because artists are perfectionists by nature, and we always want to get better and better. I still want to get better. I still work hard at getting better every day, at the stuff I do, and
I don't know, man. Not to cut you off. I've seen some of your pictures. Some of them blew me away at my even at 35. I looked at that how we met in a way with that picture of the Falcon, Sam Wilson.
oh yeah, yeah, right.
I was just sort of like, I don't think I have ever seen a better picture of Sam Wilson, the Falcon.
Well, thank you. That's a great compliment. I appreciate that.
Anytime.
But yeah, every time I sit down to the drawing table to do something, I want to try to make it my best. I want to try to make it the best thing I've ever done. And obviously, it doesn't always work out that way, because it can't in real life. But that's my intention, and that's what I work and strive toward.
Who do you think are harder on themselves, artists or writers? Because I know some writers that are
Ooh,
pretty damn hard on themselves, and artists. I know some artists have said the same thing you have said, and I admire that. That's probably why I still like talking to comic book artists and writers, because you guys are like birds of a feather flock together.
right.
There's a guilt aspect there and an expectation. But
Yes.
who's harder on themselves? I don't know. Like I've
That's
never.
a toss up.
That's
Yeah.
tough.
That's a tough one. I would say both in the same basket for sure,
That's
and
why you
not
guys
just
belong in
artists.
the business.
Yeah, all creative people.
Yeah.
It just kind of goes with the territory. There are so many creative people who end up with emotional problems or substance problems, or and it kind of comes with the territory in a certain way, because when you put yourself out there like that, it's kind of like putting your own
You're
heart
cutting
and
yourself
soul.
open, being like, here I am.
Yeah, here I am, please don't crush me. And that's the risk you take as a creative individual, and some people are more able to withstand that than others.
No risk, no reward, as my father always said.
Absolutely. Heck, I remember being at a convention one time in Artist Alley, and I was doing a little quick sketch for this, I don't know, maybe 5-year-old kid. And he said, can you draw the Flash? And I'm like, well, I think so. I'm not really, into that character so much, but I'll be glad to draw you a quick Flash. And I was trying to remember what the Flash's little wings looked like, and I was sort of struggling with it, even though it was just a quick little sketch, because I don't particularly like the character, and
Yeah.
and I wasn't into the character, but I was trying to do my best. And I had gotten about, I don't know, 30 seconds into the drawing, and this little 5-year-old kid looks at me and says, "That doesn't look like the Flash. You suck."
You can kind of laugh about it now, but at the time, I'm sure it was sort of like, come on.
Well, I just kind of looked at him and said, you don't really know how to treat someone who's trying to do you a favor, do you? Because it
Yeah.
was just a free little sketch, I mean, if someone is being nice to you, that's not a good way to approach it.
Do unto others as you would do unto them.
Yeah, exactly. But, I survived.
Artist Alley is always the best place to go in a convention. Always.
Absolutely.
Oh man, like when you cross like that big, when you see just the 4 rows or whatever, and it's just like,
Yeah.
who we talking to? Who can we find that we know their work? Because I don't like reading the internet thing and who's the guest.
Right.
I'll wait till we get there and be like, oh wow.
And to watch somebody draw in person, there's nothing quite like that.
I agree.
Yeah.
We
I learned a lot.
writer to do a sketch. A guy who was a writer.
Ah.
You ever dabble in art? He was like, no. You want to try a sketch? So he tried like Wolverine's claws.
Right.
It was just like 3 lines that said snicked. I won't name drop, but he's a good friend.
Yeah. A lot of writers secretly wish they could draw.
Yeah, it's like directing your own movie as a writer.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
You can visualize what you write on film in a way, but on a page, they know what they're writing. And that's another thing. Like when you were as an artist and all that, is there a good collaboration with a lot of the writers? I mean, let's get to Azrael for a second. Denny O'Neil, I mean, cool guy, right?
Yeah.
And that team of you, him and O'Neil, Kitson, Pascoe, loved it.
Thank you.
Loved it.
It was those, I was about to say those early issues were, I'll say they were some of my favorites on the run of Azrael. I really, really enjoyed working with the artists that followed up Barry's run.
Roger Robinson. It's not a knock on Roger Robinson. Roger Robinson was awesome.
Yeah, it's definitely no knock, because I love Roger's work, and I really enjoyed working with him in a completely different way than with Barry.
Yeah.
They're completely different artists stylistically, but each in their own way, was just a blast for me to work with.
How did that book come about for you, though? Obviously, the Ultraverse and Malibu Sun, that kind of fizzled away a little bit, but how did you get into DC? You've dabbled in Marvel, but mostly DC is where your bread and butter was.
Yeah. Well, I once I started getting published regularly in the Ultraverse, some editors at DC saw my work and became aware of me. And I got a call one day asking if I wanted to ink this cover. And I said, sure, I would love to. And I did. And I didn't think that it turned out very well, but apparently my opinion wasn't necessarily shared by them. Because I got more work. And I started working on a book called Legion.
Legion.
Yeah, like Legion 98, that Legion 97, that whole run.
So many weird Legion runs, though, at that time. It was like the Legion and the Legion with all the dots, which is the title. That I liked Legion as a kid.
Yeah. But, from there, my big step up was, and I don't exactly know how it came about, but I got a call from the unbelievably fantastic late Archie Goodwin. Yeah.
I've heard nothing but good things about Archie Goodwin.
That's all you'll hear about him from anybody, really.
Yeah.
Because he was just that great a guy and that great an editor. and and they were looking for someone to work with Barry Kitson on the Batman Punisher crossover.
Fire.
Yeah, Lake of Fire, exactly.
Cool book. Cool book. Totally dig it. But
Yeah,
obviously, it was more of a DC produced crossover.
yeah, I think
That's the vibe
so.
I get from reading it back in the day up until 2 nights ago when I reread it preparing for this. Just kind of cool book. That's all I
Yeah,
can say. Cool book.
yeah.
Love that bat suit.
I think it was, maybe in a way a test run for, how Barry and I would work together.
Yep.
We, my best of my memory, we did several fill-in issues together. Also,
Mm-hmm.
we did an Adventures of Superman, and then I did a couple of other Superman things. But eventually, enough people decided that we made a good team that when they spun Azrael off into his own book, and he was the penciler, they asked me, if I was interested in joining the team, and of course, duh.
Immediate yes.
Yeah, let me think about that for a nanosecond, and that was really kind of got me into more the upper echelon of, you know, of comics.
You were in the bat title, man. You were in the Batverse.
Yeah, yeah, which was a noticeable step up.
Especially at
So
that time because it was just, still recover. The 90s, the industry was where it was at.
right,
And Batman had just had his back broken. Superman had just died. Image just launched. Was the industry hotter than it ever was?
yeah, it was.
It was
It absolutely was. Um, I the first really substantial royalty check that I ever earned was from the Batman Punisher crossover, and I couldn't believe it when I got it in the mail. I was like, I can actually do this as a career.
yeah.
This is working out. That was the first time it really, really hit me. This is actually my career now. And that was a pretty cool moment
With Batman
with Batman. Yeah.
and the Punisher and the Joker for a few pages
For a few pages. Yeah.
and Jigsaw.
Yes.
It's an awesome book. Love that bat suit though. Like that bat suit. It's very 90s. Let's be, but
Oh, yeah.
it's cool.
Yeah. The Asbat.
The Asbat. Asbat.
Right.
Love
Yeah.
it. Paul's
Yeah.
Batman. Someone
Very
called
over the top.
it. It was the 90s.
It was the 90s. Yes.
Big capes were everywhere in the 90s.
Yes, they were. Big
Like,
capes,
oh God.
pouches,
Cape, pouches, guns,
guns, very, very big guns.
big
Yes.
guns, almost, and the small heads.
Yes. Yes.
You guys never had the small heads.
No.
No, you guys always drew stuff that made sense.
Yeah, I like to think more reasonably proportioned.
Yes.
I mean, superheroes are obviously dramatically muscular in proportion. That's just the nature of what you're drawing. But yeah, the little tiny head and the shoulders that are about 12 heads wide. Didn't really get into that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not really my thing.
Never was my thing.
No.
But now you're on Asbrail. Talk to me about this. This is what always got me. I've talked 91 issues.
Yeah.
Did it ever get like redundant, or was it just still love up until they gave you the see you later in the letters column of it at page 91? I remember reading that and I was just sort of like, I always thought if someone stayed with a book for a while, I don't want to say you give the last page to them like, oh, goodbye, and we'll be back doing whatever. But I'm just like, they just say, and I see you later to James. I'm just sort of like, something doesn't seem right about that. But
Yeah, well.
yeah.
It's a business.
What is that like though? 91 issues, 9 years. That's like your life.
Yeah. That was a good chunk of my professional life as far as being an inker for DC and Marvel. Certainly was that book, and I would say the overwhelming majority of it was really great. I loved it. I loved having, I loved the feeling of it's like when I was a kid and I would read the Fantastic Four, and every issue for a while was Kirby and Sinnott, and then later it was, John Buscema and Sinnott,
Yep.
or I don't know, maybe for your time frame, I don't know who it would have been. Maybe the John Byrne FF or
John Byrne FF.
yeah.
Well, when I started reading comics with Kitson and you, O'Neill, Dan Jurgens Superman, Dan Chichester's Daredevil.
Yeah.
So many.
Yeah.
Spider-Man obviously was all over the place with 19,000 titles, but
Right. But by those days, you didn't find those incredible runs like Kirby had, on books, or John Romita, or like some of the.
No one stayed still in one spot and grew that spot.
No. So to accomplish something like that in the more modern era made me feel really cool. I liked it, and as I mentioned before, I learned a lot of things working with Barry. He has a particular style and an approach to his artwork that was very educational for me. And it forced me to do some things that I didn't naturally do well. And so I got better at them. And I will always appreciate that about his work. I think stylistically, I'm probably more similar to Roger's work. He and I shared a love of, film noir, like we talked about, and that type of artwork with the heavy shadows. And so
you guys had a synergy.
Yeah, in a way, it was like I had to become better to work with Barry because we weren't the same stylistically.
Yeah.
But then once we moved on, or once he moved on, and Roger came aboard the book, it was kind of like, oh yeah, I remember this. This is kind of how I like to work. So I was able to put both of them together at that point.
When working on a book for that long, though, obviously you have some say in where you think the character goes. Was there ever sort of like a collab between you, Barry, or Roger, Denny, and whoever else may have been writing to sort of drive the direction, or was that just primarily up to the writer?
I think it depends on the book and the creative people involved.
Mm-hmm.
In this particular case, because Denny had co-created Azrael.
Yes.
And because I think at the time he was still the Batman group editor.
And the legend.
Yes, and a legend.
And
absolutely. It was sort of understood that, the book was how Denny wanted it to be.
Yeah.
I think that's how it, my understanding at least, that's primarily how it worked on that book. I think there are other books where the artist or some of the other creative people have more input, but I think that was pretty much Denny's baby.
And 100 issues, can't beat it. But the 91 you did were great.
Thank you.
I have all of them. I must confess that I don't own all 91.
Yeah,
I've got a good chunk because when you're a kid, there's a few months you don't get out and about, and I promise one of these days I'm going to get all of them. I read trades and things like that.
Yeah,
but 91 issues.
I confess that part of me lost interest when they changed the costume.
It's a weird costume. I like the red. I love the red and the yellow.
Yeah. The Quesada designed costume to me is just perfect for the character.
Yeah.
And when you've got a character with these, the blades that come out and the flames swirling around, why get rid of what makes it really cool?
What was with the blue? I'm like, what is that? When I was reading recently, what is this?
But, yeah, I don't know. That I was sad to see that costume go, and I never felt quite the same after that.
And it's a shame that suit really doesn't get any love today. Obviously, there's been new iterations of the character, and he wears all white and red. But I'm like, you know what? The red and yellow still still means something.
I do a lot of people have me do a lot of drawings of Azrael for commissions.
Yeah.
And basically the only thing that I insist on is that I do the original costume. And the thing is, that's what everybody wants.
That's what everyone wants. I was just going to say that's what everyone wants. If it's not broken, don't fix it.
Right.
But
Yeah, nobody asks me for Azrael with an alternative costume. Everybody wants the flaming blades and the cape and the whole bit, and which is good because that's all I'm interested in drawing.
is that the character you've gotten the most commissions for?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. There are some. I mean, I've done a lot of Batmans, but between the two of them, that's probably my most popular request.
In your portfolio on your website, you have a pretty killer Spawn. You got a
Ah,
great Hawk Girl. Actually, all of them are great. There's nothing I find wrong with any of them.
great. Thank you.
Love them all. The Batman one with him leaning off the roof, kind of looking like he's getting ready to do the dive
Oh yeah,
with the gray and the black and
yeah.
nothing beats it.
Thanks.
Nothing beats
I
it.
had a really good time doing that one. That was a lot of fun.
Has there ever been a weird commission or a request that's like a character you may never have touched professionally or anything like that?
Yeah, there've been a variety of them. The characters that I've never drawn prior to being asked to do the commission, and that's usually fun. Um, I've had some odd requests, some of which I could describe on this show, and others I probably shouldn't.
Well, the ones that you can.
Um, gosh, I'll tell you one that I haven't been asked to do that I would like to one day. There's a guy that does this theme for commissions called I think it's called 1 Minute Later. Have you ever heard of that?
I've heard of it, but I don't know. I don't know exactly what it is.
So the theme is you'll take like a classic comic book cover, the scene from a cover, and say, okay, what would this scene look like a minute later? And it's up to the artist to come up with some interesting creative solution to that.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
That's
I
actually
love that.
cool. Because the comic covers are cool when it's the character and like that, that epic, money shot, if you will, just the glory shot. And no, sometimes when you have like a bit of the story on the cover, what's it like a minute later? I dig that. I dig that a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I've seen some of the 1 minute later, commissions by various artists, and some of them are just so creative and so interesting that I'd love to do that sometime.
I can always think of weird characters I could ask artists to draw, though, like or just something out of their realm. There's a few ideas I have that,
Yeah,
and they're not even comic book characters.
I love doing non-comic book characters. Actually, I'm glad you brought that up. I'm a real admirer of Bill Sienkiewicz's artwork,
Cool.
and I love watching him do his portraits, or he'll do kind of an in memoriam, of actors or musicians who have passed away, and I love to see what he does with that kind of thing.
Is that something you would dabble in?
I have. It's usually in my sketchbooks though, so people rarely even see it.
So,
But I'm really interested in especially musicians.
well, there's somebody. The 27 Club. There's how full is that club? Jeez.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I saw a meme online the other night. It was kind of messed up. It was a grunge singer reunion, and all it did was show a cemetery.
Oh, ouch.
Yeah, even I was like, ouch, and I was like, oof.
It hurts because it's true.
It is. The truth always hurts. No,
Yeah.
you know what? I was thinking about this recently about characters that weren't comic creators, comic book characters that I'd like to personally possibly have a commission of. The Falcon from the movies.
Okay.
You know what I'm talking about?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that film noir, the hat, just the pencil mustache. I was just like, you know what? That'd be funny just to see different people's take on that.
Yeah. Well, anybody that would want me to do anything related to film noir, has automatically got me right from the first sentence. So, yeah, that sounds like a great idea.
We'll keep talking then after this broadcast, after this one airs.
I've actually done some film noir. What was it? I've done some pulp stuff like The Shadow, and that's always really fun because that fits in stylistically exactly where we're talking about.
Yeah. And you could take the red handkerchief. That can kind of go anywhere. It's like Azrael's cape with the
right.
that red cloth. It can go anywhere.
It can. and black and red make a really striking combination.
Yes, they do.
I love. I've got a whole sketchbook of nothing but black, white, and red drawings.
Really?
And yeah.
Wow. I'd like to see that one of these days. That's gonna. What about the other pulp characters, like say the Phantom or the Spider or some of those?
Yeah, love the Spider.
All.
I'm a big Doc Savage fan. You know, I was a big fan of the pulps growing up.
Yeah.
And I read pretty much all of them. And yeah, the Spider as well. I was a big fan of that. There was one that I wasn't quite as much into called G8 and his Battle Aces.
Yep.
And yeah, that was kind of fun. There's just any of the pulp stories really got me as a kid.
See, I grew up on the serials because my parents were baby boomers.
Yeah.
So by guilt by association, if you will, I would watch the movie serials that some of those characters were based in. Warren Hull as the Spider, or Victor Jordan as the Shadow, or Tom Tyler as the Phantom. That's how I kind of pre-Billy Zane, you know, all that Alec Baldwin time. So
right,
you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
yeah.
I love this. I love the Spider's ring. You know, where he would. Did he actually dip it in the criminal's blood and put the reds?
He would brand them with their own blood in the pulp.
Blood, right?
When they did the serial, they allude to him being the criminals being, you know, tied up, you know, on the street corner, and they were branded, but not like, you know, to the Ben Affleck style and, you know, Dawn of Justice where he would brand them.
Right, right.
Yeah, the Spider was pretty. I love the Spider.
Yeah, in the books, he took no prisoners.
He was a vicious, vicious character.
Yes, yes, he was. He was kind of like the anti-Batman.
And in a way, but the funny thing is that Batman, when he was created, he was that grim.
That's true. Maybe I should say he was the anti-Doc Savage.
I know what you're saying, but I know because like it was only like a few issues where Batman was that gun-toting,
right?
You know,
vigilante. Yeah,
yeah, Dr. Death hunting,
right?
Vampire. Oh, it's like I have a, you know, those early Bob Kane, Bill Finger Batmans. You know, it wasn't all Bob Kane. You know, it's
no.
No. Did you ever see the documentary Batman? Bob, I forgot. Damn, what was it called? Bob Kane and Me or something? Batman and Me, the Bill Finger story.
Yeah, very enlightening, huh?
Really did change a lot of my perception of the whole.
It did
process. Yeah,
I don't know about you, but I've kind of gotten tired of the whole, you know, Batman never kills, and you know, if I must take the Joker back to prison because otherwise I'm just as bad as he is thing. That to me is really tired.
It's stupid. It got old. It got old. Batman for me got old right around New 52.
Yeah.
I got a little done with it. And it was one of those things, like we were saying earlier, I kept buying it and buying it. And I'm not a knock on the creative, but I would just be like, this isn't for me. Like, there are other people out there who will now be influenced by Batman in the way that I was in the 90s.
Right.
I had a grown up moment. I said, this is just not my Batman anymore. So
right. Yeah,
well, here you go. But it's like, hey man, issue 1's worth $50.
Well, whatever. If I was a superhero and I had an arch villain nemesis,
they're going down.
And yeah, they're going down. And you know, maybe the first time I send them to Arkham Asylum, but you know, it would not take them escaping Arkham like 512 times and murdering more people to get me to the point where I would say enough is enough.
I know.
You know?
One of the things about, and they dabbled with this in the multiverse, I guess, where Batman at one is like the Punisher. They call him the Grim Knight, and he's got like guns upon guns upon guns. That whole metal thing, I was just like, thank God I got out before the bubble burst. But I know as a fan of the character, as you are, and kind of on the same wavelength about him not killing or being like that, I grew up with the Michael Keaton Batman. So it's like, no Joker was coming back after that movie.
No.
And that's how it would be.
Tim Burton doesn't roll that way.
Now, when we saw The Dark Knight, a friend of mine and I, we saw The Dark Knight, and the iconic Heath Ledger performance. He comes out of that truck, and there's Christian Bale on the bat pod, and
Right.
I want you to hit me. I want you to hit me. Hit me. Hit me. Hit me. And you see that? I'm like, I was like, I don't know about you, but the movie would be over right about now.
Yes.
And when they did Rises, I thought when he returned to the city, I was like, oh, this is going to be great. He's going to go to his parents' grave and ask for, I have to break my one rule. And then they didn't. I was just sort of like,
here we go again.
Here we go again.
Yep.
I won't kill you.
Yeah. I mean, I think, when, gosh, what was the I can't believe I'm spacing on this right now, but the classic, incredibly well done graphic novel that Brian Bolland drew with Batman and the Joker, and it ends up with both of them just sort of laughing.
Oh, The Killing Joke.
No, Killing Joke.
Killing Joke. Yeah, The Killing Joke.
I'm losing my mind. The Killing Joke is really one of my all-time favorite comic books, and that to me was the apex of the, I'm Batman and we're sort of more alike than not kind of story.
Yeah,
that was done as well as that could be done.
Yeah,
and I could have left it there, and moved on to other things.
I could have left Joker with Heath Ledger.
Well, there you go.
The film and the comics. Killing Joke would have been a good ending, but Joker brings money. Yeah,
he does. People never get tired of him, for sure.
Oh, I did.
He's a blast to draw.
Oh, you guys did it with Angel Insane. I was just like that. Right. Your Jokers were cool. You and Barry. I think that was Roger.
That was Barry.
It was Barry.
Actually, both Barry and Roger did some Jokers in Azrael.
Yes,
as I recall.
I love the rectangular face of the Joker, not like where the smile just sort of like.
Yeah. No, they were both really good. I remember there was a storyline that Barry did where we were in Arkham Asylum, I think, and so that's where he encountered the Joker, I think, in that storyline.
Yes.
But the thing that I always remember about Roger's Joker is he gave him a pompadour hairstyle.
The hat,
which I thought was awesome. I think that was an inspired moment by him.
One of my favorite issues, and it makes sense now after this conversation, was the one where Azrael fights the vampires and the werewolves, because it plays with that universal motif. How the book starts with like that Dr. Frankenstein-esque creature just sort of like looking at the viewer, and I was just like, this book. I remember reading it as a kid, and I was like, this book is just awesome.
Oh, that's great. That was actually my first story with Roger. That was Roger's first book, and after taking over from Barry.
Love that book. If we ever cross paths, that's the book I'm bringing to you. It's beat up. It's dated. I'm sure. I know writers and artists like that. The dated comic books that are well worn and well loved.
Yeah.
Not one just bought at the convention.
Well, I hope we run into each other at Terrificon sometime. By the way, you mentioned that earlier, and I'd love to go to that convention someday.
It's a fantastic convention. It's I know the guy a little bit. We're not like best buddies, but he follows this page, so that's sort of like one of those like. Now it's a good time at the Mohegan Sun Casino. It's everything you kind of want in a convention. Comics. There's a lot of comics, but now obviously they're going in that Hollywood route. Right. Met Barry at one of those. Met Barry Kitson at Terrificon 2018. And somebody made the London joke to him, and I just sort of like...
Really?
Yeah.
They might have thought that through a little better.
Yeah, I was just sort of like, I'm going to take 3 steps back.
Yeah.
So, I got my backpack. I'm the guy that's got 30 books in my backpack.
Right.
He said that. I was just like, okay, he doesn't need my book right this second. I'm going to go over to Keith Williams or someone like that.
come back and hopefully he's forgotten all about this. Yeah.
You know what's funny is that you know what I miss the most about the comics of that era? The letters page. Love it. Today
Oh,
it's as
yeah,
easy as
yeah.
like a Facebook post or message boards as it was maybe 15 years ago, but I
Right.
loved the letters page.
I agree with you on that. I used to really enjoy reading the letters page, if nothing else, to see if there was anyone writing letters in who agreed with me about what we had, what we had read. Because I always had opinions about, what was going on in the books. And when I would find someone else who shared my opinion on the letters page, I felt really validated. It was tons of fun, and I I used to love the little editorial uh, comments on the letters page too. And I think this got to be more common in the 70s,
Yeah.
where the writer and or editor would write sometimes a little background editorial on the letters page about the story. And I found those endlessly fascinating.
Nothing beats it.
No.
Nothing beats that stuff. They brought it back briefly though, like maybe 12 years ago or something like that. DC dabbled with it and it only lasted like a year tops. But
Mm,
today they have social media to
right.
have people air their grievances about stuff like that.
Yes. Yes. it Social media gives us an organized forum in which to be a-holes.
It does, but I try not to be.
I just have no interest in, I have no interest in being one, and I have no interest in people who are one. So that leaves a lot of social media out for me,
Yeah.
like Twitter. I don't do much on Twitter
Twitter.
because it's just, it's kind of like what cable TV has become, where you get two or three people across a desk screaming at each other.
Yep.
And a lot of the sports media has become that too. They just, they each pick a side and then they scream at each other for a while.
Yeah, and you have Bill
It's just
Cower in the
boring.
middle, and you have Bill Cower for some reason in the middle, just being like,
Right.
I'm the coach, and I won a Super Bowl, and I know what it's like. Yeah, that's the thing. It's just constant
Yeah. It's just
bickering.
boring to me.
Yeah. But talk to me about this comic restoration, art restoration, how
Yeah,
you fell into that, because it's a very interesting thing. Talk to me a little bit about that, if you will.
sure. I never even knew it existed as a thing until about 15, 20 years ago. And someone in the collecting world just mentioned it to me, like, you're an artist. And they knew that I had digital skills as far as knowing my way around Photoshop and Illustrator and programs like that. And they felt like I had a good eye for things, being an artist. They said, have you ever thought about doing restoration work? And my first reaction was like, well, what's that? I didn't even know what he was talking about. uh, but the more that it was explained to me, and the more I saw examples of it, I was like, well, hell yes, I could do that. And I was a little bit interested at first, and I thought, well, let me give it a try and see how it feels. And I put in about, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 months worth of background work to just develop, polish some of the skills that I felt would allow me to do restoration. As far as and here I'm talking mostly about work that is missing logos, word balloons, that kind of thing. And
But
um,
it's done digitally, right? Or
well, it's
touch
both.
ups.
Yeah, it's both a digital and an analog process. Um, if you have a cover, for example, who which once had a logo and the little mascot box and the captions and the word balloons, and some or all of them have fallen off over time, like happens with a lot of the older ones.
Yes.
Um, Initially, it's a digital process for me to recreate those, but ultimately, it's me with an X-Acto knife, cutting them out and pasting them on an overlay, usually, just like they did back in the day.
Back in the day, you're using the analog method. You're using the
Yeah,
old school methods because
Yeah, I mean, back in the day, when I would visit the DC or Marvel production departments,
When they
you
were
know,
across the street.
yeah, oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and that is back in the day. But I always loved watching the production artists at work, putting the covers together like that, working with stats and things, and so I thought, well, that might be fun to do. But what really hooked me on it is when I realized I would become exposed to all of this incredible artwork that I might never get a chance to see otherwise.
Like
Um,
what? Are there any specific pieces that when you saw just, oh, holy crap?
oh, tons, really, tons. Uh, Looking at original artwork in person, especially, is incredibly educational for an artist. To actually look at it and say, and to be able to see, oh, he did that with a brush like this. You can't tell that always from a published comic book, but you can tell it from the original artwork.
The original black and white.
Yeah, exactly. And so I love that part of it. The first time I had a Frazetta piece sitting in front of me that I was working on, I was like, holy cow, this is Frazetta, right in front of me. I'm working on a Frazetta piece, or Bernie Wrightson, or just
God
name
rest
your,
his, God
yeah,
rest his soul.
yeah,
Yeah.
name your fantastic artist. Uh, and once I realized that I could actually, uh, become that I could have these pieces in front of me a lot of times. It just opened my eyes, and then I fell in love with the idea of doing restoration. Even if I was just adding a logo to something, to be able to see the piece was worth it to me. Getting paid for it was just an additional benefit.
Was
But
great.
yeah, it was gravy. But just seeing all this great artwork has just been fantastic.
Did it make you appreciate the past work a hell of a whole lot more?
I always appreciated it.
Yes.
Yeah, that started back in art school
Yeah.
when I really first developed an appreciation for all the great artists, in other fields, in art history. Um, so and I've always, because of that, I've always had a real appreciation and admiration for some of the artists in the comics industry who could easily have crossed over into doing illustration and fine art. I have a particular appreciation for them. But yeah, doing the restoration just really opened my eyes to a lot of things. And like I said, seeing the artwork is having it in my hands is beautiful, and it's a tremendous responsibility.
Now,
Uh,
how does that come about to you, though? Does this like Marvel go, hey, Kirby's cover of Fantastic Four 9 is messed up?
no, they have their own people that they work with. Um, I work for either collectors or dealers.
Gotcha.
So, if a collector happens to buy a piece, and it's usually either the older pieces where things have fallen off, or the much more modern pieces where everything is done digitally now. So, covers now, you buy the original art and they don't have logos on them. They don't have all of that stuff on them. And sometimes they don't even look like covers necessarily. It's amazing to look at a side by side and just have a nice piece of artwork, but it doesn't have the logo. It doesn't have the little, character in the corner, the issue number. Without that stuff, it doesn't always look like a cover.
It
It,
looks like just like a big
it looks pinup.
pinup or a
Yeah,
splash.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so, from an aesthetic standpoint, if somebody buys a cover, they want it to look like a cover, and that's not only from an aesthetic standpoint, but from a business standpoint.
Yes.
Because as a collector or a dealer or someone who's going to potentially sell that cover down the road, um, you know, it increases the market value of the piece if I can make it look more like the actual cover.
Now, do you just do comic art, or could you do other things like restorations? Like, say, we were talking about old movies a little while ago, how the old movies sort of have that artistic side.
Right.
Is that something you could dabble in?
I don't know, actually. I hadn't really given that some thought. I've pretty much stuck to comic book and comic strip artwork. I've done a lot of work with like the Sunday strips and also dailies.
The funnies,
The funnies, yes, the newspaper funnies,
newspaper.
and that's been really interesting. That has actually opened my eyes to a greater appreciation for the artistic talents for a lot of the great cartoonists.
Oh man, those cartoonists.
Oh,
You see some of their quote unquote runs on a
yeah,
newspaper. Holy, just their life.
yeah, yeah, and really great artists too.
Yes.
Many, if not most of them, are really artists to be admired. Just because you do something in a cartoony style, doesn't mean it's not great art. It can be, in my view.
Well, most art is good. There are bad. You never saw me draw. I can't draw. I can't draw for the life of me.
Well, that's all right. You have other gifts.
There are some gifts. There are some other gifts out here that I possess. There's a writer in here somewhere.
Ah, very good.
Somewhere.
Let him out.
Too wordy. I think I'd be too wordy.
Ah,
That's like when I get rambling and ranty and chatting you up, there's just way too many words come out.
well, but that's only, that might be true in the first draft, right? But that's what second and third drafts are for.
That's also what full-time jobs prevent you from doing.
Well, that's true. That's a fair point.
That is a very fair point, and not to knock that, but I'm with you. I have some notebooks of like short stories, crap like that I would just love to just touch up again.
Yeah, you should do it someday.
I probably will, because I do not want to live a life of regrets.
No, absolutely not.
Now, doing this art restoration, is it something that this is what you're going to be doing, or would you like to potentially take on a monthly title again?
I think my days of taking on a monthly title are over. I'm just not interested in that grind. I'm working on the current commission piece I'm working on is an inking commission of a double-page spread penciled by Ed Bennis.
No,
and it's rather detailed, and the style is one that is taking me a while. It's
having like flashbacks.
having a little bit of flashbacks,
like
yeah.
the '90s, where you're kind of like, oh crap, you're looking at the clock.
No, and that's the point. See, that's the point. I don't have to do that anymore. With a monthly title, at some level, you have to do that. But with the commission, I can take as long as I want, and then I can feel really, really good about it at the end. Actually, it's sitting here in front of me. So it's here's the double-page spread.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and there's the part that's done. So it's there's a lot there, and it's not the kind of thing I would ever want to feel rushed about doing, and I don't ever want to feel that rushed feeling again.
The damning feeling, wasn't it?
It's the difference between, wow, wouldn't it be cool to work in comics, and okay, here's the real life version, as a real job. And the hey, wouldn't it be cool to work in comics was always more fun than the real version.
I always thought of that, even when I was a kid. I'd go out for like a bike ride or a walk or something like that, and I'd be thinking about the creative teams, be like, gee, I wonder if like Tom Grummett's out on a walk, or you, or what. And I'm like, no, they're probably busting their tails trying to make a deadline.
Yeah, pretty much. I think the comics biz, there are exceptions, of course, but I think the comics biz, for the most part, is probably a field for young people.
Mm-hmm.
I know, when I was 20 years old, I didn't care if I worked all night, because I was having a blast and I was doing comics, and I was 20 years old.
You can live
Uh,
life and do your job. Now it's
yeah, now I have different priorities. I have different things, that I have to balance, and working all night to get a page done just really does not seem very appealing to me.
so you've had your run.
Yeah, I would say so. I do tons of commissions. I love doing them. It's a lot of fun for me. I can experiment with different styles. I can do what I want. I don't have an editor breathing over my shoulder. Um, and the restoration stuff is a blast. I've been doing that now for at least 15 years. And for the reasons I explained, I really enjoy doing that. And between those two things, I'm happy. I'm really enjoying what I do.
Do you still read comics?
I do, but nowhere near as much as I used to. It takes something special to really get my attention.
What's defined special? Is there something that you're reading now that just jumps out at you?
I would say, I'm trying to think of the last comic book that I bought. I think I'm probably more inclined to buy something because of the art than the story at this point. Probably because I'm just really focused on
The art.
getting better. And so when I see something that I think is really well done, I'll get it so I can study it and figure out what they did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The last one I bought, I got rid of like my shelf and all that during the
Yeah.
pandemic. If I go, I mostly buy older issues.
Right.
Honestly, I think it was one of you and Barry's books.
Okay.
Really, I'm dead serious. I think I went
Yeah.
I don't want to say dollar diving, but I think I just went back issue, sort of like hunting
Right.
around.
Right.
$6 is a lot for a comic book.
Yeah. Well, I would say the thing that's comics related that I most recently got that I'm really happy about is these IDW books, the artist editions that they put
Yeah,
out. I got the new one with Kevin Nolan's Marvel covers,
nice.
and I am absolutely, you know, in over my head studying that one.
Black Box has some good indie, like kind of indie. Dark Horse obviously is doing the Dark Horse thing. Image has sort of now become a little too commercial for their own good, at least in my opinion. IDW. What the hell's the other one? It escapes me. But yeah, there's a lot of good artists and a lot of good quality and enough to make everyone sort of tastes happy.
Right. What's the book? I forget the exact title. Who is killing the children?
Yeah, that's I think it's Something is Killing the Children. I know what
Something's
you're talking
killing the
about.
children. Yeah, yeah. And someone wanted me to do a drawing of the main character from that, and I was totally unfamiliar with the book, so I got some to study up on it, and that's a pretty interesting book.
That's a very interesting book. Vampire State Building was one of the last series
Ah,
I bought. I don't know if that was something. Vampire State Building.
wow.
Vampires in the Empire State Building, and they're trapped on the top floor, basically just sort of like fighting their way out.
Oh, that's cool.
Cheesy.
Yeah, but it could be cool.
It was cool. It was cool,
Cheesy
but
can
like,
be fun, right?
cheesy is fun, but
Yeah,
it's the vampires that look like the monster. When I say Dracula, you think Bela Lugosi or Christopher Lee
right.
or John Carradine or
Yeah.
Gary Oldman, but like these were like the monstrous Dracula, a
Oh,
vampire.
nice. Yeah, I'd be willing to give that a shot. Yeah. One story I always wish I could have worked on was I had this notion about kind of a combination supernatural war story where where a group of elite commandos all get killed on a mission, and they end up in hell uh, by mistake. There's like a clerical error, and they were put in the wrong place, and because of the bureaucracy of heaven and hell is so complicated, the only way they can get out is by fighting their way out of hell. all through seven circles.
Wow.
I
Sort of
may
like,
be, I may be the only one that likes this idea, but
no, I would read that. I'd watch that. I'd read that. It's like sort of Dante's Inferno meets Predator.
yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
That's a good description. Yeah. I liken it a little bit also to Aliens, the second movie,
The team,
which,
like the team aspect.
well, yeah, which is a combination. The first Alien was like, science fiction horror. The second movie, Aliens, I always thought was more of a war story.
Yeah.
It was like a science fiction alien or science fiction horror war story. And I always really enjoyed that combination. So I thought something along those lines might be interesting.
Aliens really is it's a movie that inspired a lot of people.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
From a writing aspect to giving the side characters a voice that would make them memorable for a book
Right.
or any form of media. Aliens is just awesome. Everything else after it,
No. But yeah, it's one of the very few sequels that, in my view, is even better than the first one.
without a doubt.
Yeah.
Aliens better than Alien is just like you said, that creepy sort of haunted house in space.
Right.
There's only one. This is like just that war, just in your face, practical effects.
Yes, absolutely. I like Terminator 2 better than Terminator 1.
See, I'm in the camp where I would put them 1A, 1B because T1 is just, for me, the first act or two is a straight almost horror movie. You don't know who's who. What is this Michael Biehn character? Who is he? Then there's the whole hunt for Arnold. Then the third act, I know it's a little honky tonk with the limitations Cameron had with the budget, but
right.
T2 is pretty perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, they're both really good. I'll say that.
Again, everything after that,
yeah,
eh,
not so good.
So good. That's so good. No. Oh God, 8 sequels that were better than the original. You got me thinking for a second. Empire, but that's different because it's a saga.
Yeah.
Not Rocky. Maybe Rambo? No. Depends on what you like. Yeah, that's another conversation for a different day.
Yes.
But I'm with you. Aliens so Aliens meets Dante's Inferno.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
With a little bit of the Expendables.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, because in order to fight their way through the 7 circles of hell, these guys can't, and women can't be just regular soldiers. They've got to be the best of the best,
and they have to have a personality.
And each one has to have a personality. Other than not the Expendables, I think the Dirty Dozen is who I had in mind.
Great movie.
Yeah. So yeah, the Dirty Dozen meets Dante's Inferno. There's our elevator pitch.
Have you ever pitched it, or is it something that you would do like a Kickstarter for to work at your leisure type thing?
Maybe. It's just something that, popped into my head one day and I've never quite been able to pry it out of my brain. So, maybe one of these days, I'll flesh it out and see what, if anything comes of it. Usually when things don't leave me like that, they end up getting done sooner or later.
The only thing that's in my head that I'm trying to get done is I want to do like a short movie, like 22 minutes or so, 24 minutes, and have it be like an episode of a 1950s television series.
Oh, very good.
Like a Superman kind of, I'm talking like Mike Hammer, Peter Gunn.
Right.
Something like that.
With a really cool theme music like Peter Gunn.
Dun, 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 yeah. Dun, dun, dun. I love Peter Gunn.
Oh, that's the best. Yeah.
Oh, God bless Crick Stevens. The movie was a little.
No, not so much.
Not so much. I'm like, why is Peter Gunn in color? I remember saying that when I was a kid. I'm like, why is Peter Gunn in color?
Shouldn't be.
Should not be, because the black and white in that City by the Bay just worked.
Yes, absolutely.
I don't know how big of a Peter Gunn fan you are, but the episodes where he goes to Mexico, like in the last season, they're not bad. They're just not great.
Right. It's not what you become used to if you watched from the beginning.
That was one of the best DVD. That was one of the best birthday presents I ever received.
Oh, very
Years
nice.
back, I had the Peter Gunn DVD set. I'm like, what is? I'm like, what is that like on the counter? I'm like, I knew it was a DVD set because you know the size.
Right.
I open it up and all I see is just that him with the suit, just kind of with that
Yeah.
smile, and I'm like, whoa,
Yeah. Love
whoa,
that show.
love that show. It's on
Yeah.
Tubi now if you ever want to catch up on it.
Oh, really? Cool.
Tubi.
Awesome.
So what else is going on before we part ways? What's the next project? Just the restoration? Just the spread page, the double spread.
Yeah, that's what I'm working on right now. I'm finishing up a couple weeks worth of restoration stuff because prior to that, I had about. Are you familiar with the good folks at Clan McDonald?
Through your posts,
Oh,
I
okay.
kind of Googled them and
Yeah, yeah.
I checked them out.
Yeah, so I had a big batch of commissions through them that I finished up, and now I'm catching up on some of the restoration work, and then I've got a birthday coming up in May, so I'm going to take a week and go to Santa Cruz and forget about it all.
Oh, really? When's your May? You're a May baby too. When's your birthday?
Not till the 27th, but I'm going to take off the first week.
25th.
Oh, there we go.
There we go.
Geminis.
The duality.
Yes, the duality.
Duality. No, what I usually do, obviously I'm on vacation now, but I usually take the Friday before Memorial Day. So I get that nice 4-day weekend.
I'm just avoiding that altogether by going the first week.
Yeah, I could picture it being kind of chaotic.
Yeah. It's a little early, still
Yeah.
in Santa Cruz.
Yeah.
Once it gets to be summertime, it's a kind of a nightmare with tourists and visitors. But I think it'll be okay this time of year, and so I'll be able to hang out by the water. There's a lot of really cool hiking trails, giant redwood trees. It's a really cool place.
I brought my bicycle with me on this trip. It's a little chilly.
Oh, very good.
Chilly, but it's one thing that I've wanted to get back into so bad for the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Bike
Are,
ride.
are you a recreational biker, or have you ever done anything more serious?
Mostly recreational. I once toyed with the idea of doing the Pan Mass Challenge in 2009.
Oh, okay.
I really flirted with the idea of doing it, but I was sort of like, I'm too competitive in my own nature. I didn't want to. I didn't want to kill myself doing it. I ride 5-10 mile trips in my prime.
Right.
That's a 2-day trip, and I knew that I
Yeah.
would, even at 23, I would have been like huffing and puffing. And
Those long bike trips that are sometimes 4 or 5 days, that's pretty heavy duty stuff. Yeah.
yeah,
I went through a period of time where my sport of choice was triathlon, and so
swimming, running, and bicycling and cycling.
yeah,
Yeah,
swim, bike, run, and so I did a lot of bike riding during those years, and it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
how your knees holding up?
Not bad. Not as good as they were 10 years ago, but
Well, you know what did me in? Tennis.
yeah.
And I was competitive, so there I am trying to be Pete Sampras, and
Right.
I mean, I could still walk and run. I just feel like by the time I'm on the backside of 30, it's all kind of downhill. That's what a lot of my older friends have said.
Well, you know what though? I think I call BS on that. I mean, yes, there's an aspect to that because, of course, our bodies don't rejuvenate. This isn't a science fiction story.
No,
But I would encourage you, if it's something that you really enjoy. Yeah. So, I mean, I took up triathlon for the first time when I was about 50.
really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And did it for almost 10 years.
Good man.
Yeah. Oh, thanks. I mean, and I'm not like one of those athletic freaks, I mean, I wasn't born Michael Jordan or, something like that with those kind of genes. I'm just a regular guy.
Regular.
But if it's something you enjoy, and I would just encourage anyone to not necessarily give up on that stuff just because you get to a certain number.
I hear you. That, and I would like to start kind of running again, and
Yeah,
I'll always bowl. I'm always going to candlepin bowl. I think I'm going to do that till the day I drop.
there you go.
Well, I'd love to have you back on again and chat with you about anything, man. It's been a delight talking to you.
Thanks. It was really fun for me too. Appreciate the invitation.
Anytime, I'll reach out to you. We can shoot the breeze on anything and anything under the sun.
Awesome.
Where can people reach you if they want to check out your work, though? Where can people check you out, James?
A variety of places. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I have a website, www.jamespascoe.net. I have a variety of galleries on CAF, the Comics Art fan site, if you're familiar with that. I've got galleries of my artwork, my restoration work of all kinds on there. So yeah, I'm all over the place.
Nice. And I'll keep sharing your artwork on the Bad for Your Health Facebook page if you're cool with that.
Sure, appreciate that.
Excellent. Well, thank you, James, for joining us today on Bad for Your Health Entertainment. The next show will probably be April 30th. We're going to be doing a big review of The Seventh Victim. Don't forget to check out Still Dead Illustrations for some artwork. It's some of the best I've seen. Her shirts are great. She even designed the Bad for Your Health shirt. And just have a good day, everyone. We'll see you next week. Take care. Thank you again, James.
Thank you, Tom.
And have a good day.
All right. Bye, everybody.